Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with a new knife consult for you. Today we're going to be talking about the Ferrum Forge Knifeworks Stinger XL. This is one of their most recent models and the largest knife that Ferrum Forge has ever made. That was appealing to me in a major way because a lot of the knives that they make tend to be on the smaller side of things, but they're very EDC friendly. One of the things I love about Ferrum Forge Knifeworks is the guy behind it, Elliot is very, very geeky about his knives. You can see from their YouTube channel and their regular Instagram posts that they spend a lot of time researching the materials that go into their knives and spending a lot of time making it just right. One of the things that interests me the most about the knife community and knives in general is the material science that goes into these things, whether it's the blade steel, the handle materials, or other such things, the way that they're engineered and milled and things like that. And Ferrum Forge is at the top of the game when it comes to that kind of thinking. You can see from their YouTube videos that they do a lot of thinking, even to little pieces like the stop pins and stuff like that. So very interested to get some of these in hand. This one comes to me by way of my buddy Vinny, who sent me also the Ferrum Forge Gavco spinner collaboration. I have a video on this one as well, comparing it to the Custom Knife Factory version. Both of these knives are extremely well made and share a lot of things in common, but I wanted to focus on this knife in particular because this may be the first knife that has convinced me that I probably need to buy a Ferrum Forge knife, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But before we start talking about the knife subjectively, let's go through an objective breakdown here where we take a look at some measurements. So overall, you're looking at a 4.1 inch blade, just over 4 inches it looks like. Back to the handle here, a hair over 4 inches. The cutting length is coming in right at 3.75 inches. The overall length is right at 9 inches overall. The handle length being right at about 5 inches, with the grip area including the forward finger choil at 5.5 inches. Without that forward finger choil, you lose an inch at 4 inches. The handle here is quite slim, and the overall thickness measurement is going to come in right at 0.488, so 488 thousandths, so under a half an inch. That's a nice little size right there for carry. And the blade stock is coming in at a Mongo 171 thousandths, so quite a substantial blade stock for such a thin overall knife. And I definitely like that. Let's go ahead and break this knife down anatomically. Up front is a beautifully done stone washed. It's almost like it was polished and then media blasted finish. It's a very unique finish, and I do like it. A nice user finish on this big chunk of CPM 20 CV steel. Like I said, Elliot likes to do a lot of great research into his steels and other materials, and they heat treat their own steels in-house sometimes. Otherwise, they have a very specific process by which they do it, and their steels are among the best. You know that you are getting a very well done steel with a very nice edge on it. Now this one has an aftermarket edge by the original owner, and so I can't completely qualify that, but I do know that these things come very sharp from the factory. It has this flat area right here. It's got a little bit of jimping up top that's rather useful. It's not uncomfortable. There's not a ton of traction, but it does provide some grip, particularly when the thumb is angled like that. And it definitely has a nice opener hole right here, so you have multiple deployment methods. I always appreciate a knife that's got multiple ways to open it because sometimes, I don't know, your hand is slippery and the flipper isn't going to work, but you can open it like that. It's not ideal for a thumb opening, but that does work if you're extra careful with it. You just have to keep your finger off of the lock bar back there. The blade has a forward finger choil that's full size, so I definitely appreciate that. Gives you a lot of grip options on this rather large knife. You can really choke up on that blade and do some finer cutting tasks. It's a full flat grind back to about here, and here it is just a flat grind. Now, being that it's 170 something thousandths thick, this is not going to be an ideal apple slicer, but it will do the trick. And what I've noticed is that the combination of the very nice edge bevel along with the full flat grind for most of the blade makes this a great everyday carry knife. This has to be one of the most compelling designs that I've seen come from them. Just an excellent overall blade shape and size. I'm going to bring out a couple of similar knives here to compare. Here's another 4-inch knife. This is the Shirogorov F3. Definitely another good user knife right there. Here is the ZT Knives 0920. So you can see that this is not a small knife by any means. I'm going to bust out the Paramilitary 2 right here, so you can see that it's even bigger than the PM2, so quite a substantial knife right there. Here is the Spyderco Manix 2, so significantly smaller, that Manix 2, than this Stinger XL. So I do appreciate the blade size and the blade functionality. It's super, super nice. I have no complaints. It's worked very well, and 20 CV is an awesome steel. Moving back to the pivot, this runs on ball bearings. As with all Ferrum Forge knives, it is very, very smooth. The action is excellent. The thing that I dislike about Ferrum Forge knives, and something that I'll just have to learn how to deal with, is the pivot design. Somebody called this the nipple pivot, and now I can't unsee that, so that is there. The thing that frustrates me the most, and it was a problem when I reviewed the smaller Stinger a few months ago, is that if you're trying to adjust the pivot, it freely rotates. Now, people recommended on that video that you hold the blade to the side and then do it, but to be honest, that's just annoying to me. Now, I know that Elliot does a lot of thought process into this, but I don't see the advantage there. Maybe someone can explain it to me what the true advantage is. But what I did learn is that through studying his videos is that the pivot size and diameter is not as critical as sometimes we give that credit to be. That they do precise calculations and they think about exactly how big it needs to be, because really once the blade is open, the strength is relying on the stop pin and the lock bar and not so much the pivot. So it is an interesting thing to see how they've thought about that. The stop pin is affixed with these titanium screws right here. And then we're going to get into sort of the detent and everything. This does have a ceramic Hoback Rolling Detent. I have to say, I'm just not a fan of the Hoback Rolling Detent. I'm not going to lie. I've mentioned it before in some other videos, and what I've found is that in order to get a good detent, you have to screw this thing in far enough that it actually causes the blade to get hung up on the detent. This is probably the best knife overall that I've had with the Hoback Rolling Detent. The Quieback was not very good. This knife right here particularly suffers. By the time you get a good detent, you really have a huge amount of detent to overcome on the lock bar, so that's a bit frustrating. I wish they would just put in a nice detent. I feel like with the amount of research and work that they do on these knives, that if they were to just put in a nice detent, it would just take all the guesswork out of it, because now you're going to have people giving your knives bad detents or overly tight detents rather than one that you've calculated yourself. I don't really understand the benefit there. It's another piece that's going to fail. I just don't get it. Now, luckily, there is a nice lock bar insert that is hardened D2 steel, so they do a great job of that. Moving back to the handles, all of the hardware and the handle scales are done in 6AL4V titanium. One of the best things that Ferrum Forge does is their anodizing work. I'm not exactly sure which finish this one is. This looks like a green-blue sort of combo finish with bronze hardware. All of it is absolutely beautiful. The milling on this one is called suspended animation, and to be honest, I would not recommend this particular milling pattern. While it does cut down on the weight a little bit, and I'll go ahead and bring out the scale here and we can talk about that. The weight overall is exactly 5 ounces in this trim, so a nice weight for such a big knife. The problem that I have with this handle is the millwork that's right here. It's not uncomfortable when you're holding it in your hand, but as you close the knife, I find my thumb dragging down a little bit after I've disengaged, and it gets caught right there on that milled corner, and it's a bit uncomfortable. Now, that's not a deal breaker, and that's really sort of a minor sort of complaint, but I'll just say that this is not really the ideal milling pattern for supreme comfort. It does look, see, it does it again. It does look cool, but I think that I would choose a different handle finish for that in that regard. But I will say that the anodizing is beautiful. One of the things that I appreciate very much is that they put the lock bar cutout on the inside of the knife right there, so it makes it much easier. The clip is very useful. It's not a super deep writing clip, but it is super useful and very easy for EDC. Works in all types of pants. So overall, I do like this knife. I don't think that I'm going to end up buying one, but it is probably the first Ferrum Forge that I've really liked the most. So thank you for watching, guys. Click like and subscribe, and as always, take care.